Hi, welcome back to the PCC podcast. And today I'm going to give it to you straight. I am so excited for this episode because honestly, I just had so much fun making this a reel originally. It was a short little reel concept that I thought was very, very relevant to what we're seeing in the industry today. So today we're going to be talking about if influencers were honest. So what does that mean, right? Influencers, I'm kind of lumping a collective group of people on Instagram that are essentially fitness influencers, aka people who have some kind of following, some kind of physique that attracts people to follow them, and a certain level of a lack of credibility, right? A certain level of either I got great genetics with my luck of the draw, or I had my own transformation and I decided to call myself a coach just from that. Things like that, right? I'm a hobbyist in health and fitness, but now I'm posting on Instagram as if I am an expert, right? And so I made this reel and it got a decent bit of traction on a lot of the things that you see on Instagram nowadays that I'm essentially just going to debunk. Now I have a list of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 7, 8, like 8 or 9, like a little bit less than 10. So I'm going to move pretty quick through these, but obviously not spare details where a reel can't cover it, right? So let's dive in. I have so much fun talking about these things because it's honestly it's sad because like there are people that are falling prey to all of this stuff. But like when you recognize, it's like when you're an expert in a field and like you can tell when something's like bullshit right away. The thing that comes to mind is like when it's like 9 out of 10 dentists recommend Colgate or whatever. And like I've heard from many dentists that they're like, yeah, those commercials are bullshit. Like, don't listen to those. Those are claims that are kind of just kind of pulled from sparse bits of research or like things that they can legally say to make this claim that we get behind them when really we would prefer you use this product or that product, right? And so, same thing is like here, when you're truly an expert in the field, like you don't fall for that stuff and you just see how ridiculous it is, which is why I have fun debunking it because I love seeing people's reactions when they're like, wow, I cannot believe that, like, that's the reality, right? So let's dive in. Number one, listen to your body. Listen to your body, what it wants to eat. Your body knows, it will tell you. And my response was, if they were honest, they would say, but only if you are someone who overtrains and undereats and probably also has a propensity for healthy foods and your palate wasn't fed things that were super hyper palatable and processed all throughout your life. You had parents that really helped you understand high protein, vegetables, carbs in moderation, and you have this upbringing and this knowledge of how to eat for your body. If that's the case, then yeah, listen to your body. But if not, you probably need to track your food in order to know what healthy eating and true intuitive eating actually looks like. But I'm not going to say that in my marketing because I don't want to scare you away from the hard work that it's actually going to take to transform. I'm just going to show you a false image of what I want you to think it looks like so that you buy from me. You can see the problem with this. Selling a false illusion only for someone to be incredibly disgruntled on the other side when they realize that they were sold a lie. And like that's the thing, right? It's like this, if this person actually knew that on the other side, and the truth is some of them don't. Some of them actually think that like just listen to your body is a viable strategy for fat loss and health. When like most people intuitively want to overeat. Most people's intuition, let's put it this way, most people's intuition is driven by emotions, impulse, automatic habits that they don't even think about that are just running in the background of their brain. And so if somebody who doesn't have the education, the guidance, listens to their body, they're going to intuitively want chocolate. They're going to intuitively want McDonald's. And like, I'm sorry, but that is not a viable strategy, right? And it's like if that person does have that knowledge and they know on the other side of this that they're going to want these people to track their food and not intuitively eat, then it's like just say that. Because like if you, the biggest thing with client expectations, like clients having a good experience in a program, is appropriately set expectations. Like that's all you need, is for the person to know what they're getting when they come in. And like that determines what, like when expectations match reality, people are generally happy. Anyways, I digress. Number 2, long, lean muscles. And if the influencer was honest, they would say, I have long, lean muscles because I'm tall. I'm 5'9", I'm 6 foot. But if you are under 5'4", then I'm selling you an unrealistic body type that you can never achieve because of your limb lengths with buzzwords like long, lean muscles. There is no such thing as a long muscle or a short muscle. The muscle reaches from the point of insertion on both ends on whatever limb you have. So if you are 6 feet tall with arms that you could scratch your knees with, then you will have seemingly long muscles because your insertion point from the elbow joint to the shoulder joint where the bicep inserts is going to be extremely long. And so that thing is going to be stretched long ways rather than short, right? Versus if you are a very petite person, when you flex your bicep, it's going to look like a really round peak because it's a short distance. Okay. And that's that. There's no hack in that unless you go and get bone reconstruction surgery, which is quite expensive. So, number 3, break up with the scale. Throw the scale out. Stop weighing yourself if it triggers you. This is actually contrary to evidence of long-term weight maintenance success. What does that mean? Evidence has shown, actual scientific research has shown that people who regularly weigh themselves and have lost weight are far more likely to maintain that weight loss because they're consistently keeping a pulse on where they're actually at, keeping a pulse on reality, versus people who don't. And those people who weigh in regularly, guess what they also probably have if they're doing that? They probably have some level of emotional regulation around the scale to be able to consistently do that. They don't make it mean a bunch of things. But the influencer, being honest, would say, but it sounds good to say break up the scale because you hate the scale. So I'm getting on your side, right? And I'm going to give you the illusion that you can avoid the emotional trigger of stepping on the scale so that you'll buy from me, right? Buy my $7,000 program for 3 months where I just tell you to listen to your body and break up with the scale. Like, what do you think is going to happen? Anyways, number 4. If you're not losing weight on 2,000 calories or more, your metabolism is broken. If the influencer was being honest, they would say, I'm genetically gifted. So I have a strong and robust metabolism that burns lots and lots of calories. And when I diet on 2,000 calories or more. And I lack perspective on other people potentially having other circumstances. And I lack evidence-based metabolism education, so I generalize my experience to everyone. And on the other side of that, I wonder why all my clients are frustrated and stuck. So I don't know if you guys have seen this, but like you'll relate to this if you see this a lot on Instagram, is like eating more and losing weight, right? And you see these case studies, these back-to-back pictures of like on the left, the person's fat and it says like was eating 1,200 calories. And then on the right, it's like they're skinny and it's like now eating 1,900 calories and is down 20 pounds. And like, I will be completely honest, I have done this before, right? I'm not a saint. I understand why this is appealing. However, let me just not gatekeep, because I could still say like this person was attempting to eat 1,200 calories and it was stuck, and then we worked with them, raised their calories, and they lost weight. Like I literally talked about that yesterday on an Instagram story about my client Jenna Lynn. However, the difference is that I'm willing to explain why that's the case and what's actually the nuance underneath that, instead of just letting you think about it on the surface. So what happens, like, the reality of the situation when a client comes to me and says, I want to sign up, I want to have some help, I'm only eating 1,200 calories a day and I'm not seeing any weight loss. I know it sounds shitty, but like, the default assumption that I'm going into this interaction with is that the person is not tracking their food accurately. They might not even be tracking it at all. There are a lot of people that tell me that they're eating a certain calorie amount that have not logged into MyFitnessPal in years. So they're just pulling a number out of their ass. Like, that's really all that's happening. And so like, when we start working together, we start tracking their intake, and like, what do you know? It's like 2,700 calories a day. And that's not uncommon. Like, this is not me being like a cynical asshole. Like, this is actually evidence backed. There is evidence to show that people drastically underestimate the number of calories that they eat, and they drastically overestimate the number of calories that they burn. There is a reason why people are overweight in the United States, right? And so that's probably the first reason I'll jump to. But let's say they're tracking their food and they honestly think that they are tracking 1,200 calories. Then the first thing I would do with that client is audit their food log. And most of the time, I find at least 5 or 6 things that are mislogged just because they don't know what they don't know. Like, they're just not a seasoned expert in the field, and that's why they're stuck, right? And this is why dropping your ego and being able to ask for help is such a powerful thing, is because you don't know what you don't know, right? And so that's the second thing. And so typically we find tracking errors never in the favor of under tracking. It's very rare that that is ever the case. Okay. And then the next thing is, like, let's say this person has actually tracked their food, tracked it accurately. The next thing that's most likely the situation is, if they're actually eating 1,200 calories a day, I need to know, is that happening 7 days per week? Or do we track 5 to 6 days out of the week and then we have a blank, right? And what's happening on that blank day, right? So this person might be eating 1,200 calories 4, 5, 6 days a week, and then 3,000 on the others, right? And like, on those days, the self-report again is like, I don't eat that much on the weekends. I promise you, those calories are adding up far quicker than you realize. Because over this last weekend, we went to the NASCAR race, the Coca-Cola 600, and I ate a grilled chicken patty on top of a house salad with dressing on the side. I barely used it, and a fruit cup for dinner. And even with that as my meal and 2 small handfuls of popcorn from the vendors, I was maxed out on my fat loss calories for the day after 2 normal small meals that I had at home, and that, and the handfuls of popcorn. Like, it's the bites, it's the licks, it's the tastes, it's the little things that you don't realize that really do add up. Okay. And then, okay, on top of that, if that person hires a coach, they now are hyper aware of what they're eating because now someone's watching. And so when someone's watching, you start to think to yourself, okay, normally I would eat this and maybe I would like forget to log it, but now I really have to remember. And like, do I even want to have them see that? Right. And so usually when someone joins a coaching program, their intake reduces by like 10% at least on average, just from the fact of self-consciousness. Okay. So that's before any guidance comes into play. Right. And so when the coach then comes in and adds structure to the meals, reprioritizes the macronutrient profile, gives guidance on food sources and how to actually eat, and then gets this person more consistent, like, it's no wonder they can eat more calories and lose weight, because what's happening is the perception was like, oh, I'm working so hard, and maybe 5 to 6 days a week they are adhering. But then that sixth, seventh day a week, it's like if we're not consistent there, we're blowing the calories out of the water, then like we're undoing the whole deficit. And so what the coaching accountability does is it gets someone consistent at something that's more modest, right? Maybe 1700 calories, 1900 calories a day, something that like feels livable, but is still a deficit for that person. And so instead of an average calorie intake of like 2,500 because they have a couple low days and then some blowout days, they're averaging maybe 1,900, losing weight because they were just never in that actual deficit all along, right? But it just is perceived to be more food because this person is used to trying to starve themselves to the point where they're ready to binge, right? So that's a long explanation for the eat more to lose more fallacy. And the thing is for the person that comes in, the client that actually we work with, the perceptive reality is that they ate more and lost more. Like, and it just mind fucks them, right? But as a coach, as someone who is marketing, as someone who has a duty to do right by these people, it's important that you know the science behind it. And unfortunately, a lot of these people, a lot of these coaches out there don't even understand the physiology behind this, don't even understand how many levers they're pulling when they're pulling them for the clients to see these kinds of changes. Okay. That was number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's go to number 6. Pilates body. Ooh, tell me you're profiting off of a style of training that you don't even do and that you never did, right? Okay, so if the Pilates body person, get a Pilates body. You want Pilates arms, Pilates legs, right? Skinny looking people. That's what that is. Skinny toned people. And if the influencer was being honest, they would say, I have been strength training for years, but I just started trying Pilates because it's trendy and I want my reel to go viral. So I will post myself doing Pilates, looking skinny, looking lean, and say, this is how you get the body that I have because this is what I'm currently doing to maintain, not what I did to build the body. Okay. This one's pretty self-explanatory, but I will explain it anyways for anyone who does not understand. So Pilates is not strength training. There is some resistance and there is some time under tension, but Pilates has a very low ceiling for how much muscle you can build because you're not actually overloading your muscles. And there's actually a great YouTube video by Meg Squat, if you look her up on YouTube. And she said it's a video that's like, I did Pilates for like 45 days straight or something. And here's what I learned. And she really debunks the differences between Pilates and strength training and why it is not strength training. Okay, and the only way that you get a lean and toned physique is through, guess what? Strength training. Because when you strength train, you build muscle. Muscle is what looks toned on your body. And then your nutrition is what reveals that. And for most of the people who are fitness influencers online, they either have a mix of like great genetics and some hard work, or they've worked really hard to get to their physique through like bodybuilding style training, fitness style training, really high level athletics. And then they like go do these Pilates workouts and start to be like, oh, this is like the workout that you should do to be healthy. Like, no, just no. Okay. Number 7 is cortisol is making you hold on to fat. This is a good one. Because even I took a trip down the cortisol rabbit hole for a little bit. And while I knew that it did not directly impact fat gain, there were some areas that even I fell a little victim to over the time period that I was learning this stuff. So if you guys didn't know, I'm functionally health certified, meaning that I can look at people's labs. I can tell them what's out of range, not just from a Western medicine standpoint, but from a functional standpoint, an optimal standpoint, which most clinicians are not trained to look at or to diagnose. And we're looking at dysfunction rather than clinical diagnoses, right? And so cortisol is your stress hormone, right? and it puts you in a fight or flight mode. And when cortisol's up, like your body is more hypervigilant, and all of that is true. But your body does not become exempt from the rules of thermodynamics and all of a sudden shove the food that you're eating into your body fat stores if you are in a calorie deficit. So even if you are stressed the fuck out, if you are in a calorie deficit, you will lose weight. That is still king, right? If you are expending more than you are eating. However, there are a lot of ways that cortisol impacts other systems of the body that make it just so damn hard to stay in a calorie deficit when you are high, quote unquote, high cortisol. Cortisol affects your sleep directly. It can lower your sleep quality, make it harder for you to fall asleep, easier for you to wake up at the drop of a pin, affects your deep sleep. And sleep deprivation, there is research on this. Sleep deprivation, even one night of poor sleep, can disrupt things like hunger and satiety hormones like leptin and ghrelin. And so if your hunger and satiety hormones are off, say you have more hunger hormone, less satiety hormone, what are you more likely to do? Overeat, right? And chronic sleep deprivation, even just one less hour per night, can affect whether or not your body decides to let go of muscle versus fat from a fat loss journey. So if you're in a calorie deficit and you're losing weight, if you are not sleeping well or enough, then your body might actually lose more muscle compared to fat. One of my favorite studies contrasted two groups where one slept 5 hours per night, the other one 7 to 9. Same calorie deficit, same situation for both of them except the sleep. And the group that had the sleep deprivation lost 50% more of their weight from muscle compared to fat, right? Same amount of weight loss in both groups, but one ended up much more prone to rebounding, gaining the weight back because their metabolism was affected by the loss of muscle mass. Pretty crazy, right? And that's not even, it's not even beginning to touch how sleep deprivation has more downstream effects like your decision making, your cognition, your calmness, your snappiness, right? Your blood sugar regulation. All of those things are downstream of sleep, but all of those things are also downstream of cortisol. Like when you're really stressed out and hypervigilant over a long period of time, it can also affect decision making, brain fog, right? Mood. As well as blood sugar regulation, cortisol can affect that directly, meaning that you might be more prone to heavy blood sugar dips that make it easier for you to overeat, and mood swings and cravings that affect your preferences on what you want to eat, right? So cortisol has all of these indirect effects that do impact whether or not you're in a calorie deficit or a surplus. And if you're in a surplus, then you will hold on to fat. And if you are in a surplus, the presence of really high levels of cortisol chronically for a long period of time does influence where that body fat gets stored. So if you are in a calorie surplus and in a chronically stressed state, it is more likely that you store fat in your belly and your hips compared to evenly across your body. As well as visceral fat. So, with that being said, cortisol does not change the rules of thermodynamics. And if anyone is selling you, fix your cortisol and just lose fat by taking these supplements, doing this cortisol test, please run in the other direction. Okay. Lastly, I think this is number 8. Find a movement you love. Fall in love with movement. And if the influencer was honest, they would say, you might never actually like strength training, going on walks, but that doesn't make you exempt from having to do it for your health. And this is a tough one. Like I just had a conversation with a client today as I'm recording this. She was like, we were talking about strength training. She's a 50-something-year-old woman. She has the diet part down. She's got the steps down. She can walk for days, but it is really hard to get her in the gym. She really doesn't like the gym. And today I found out why. It's because like her neighborhood gym is like a little weird, and the HOA lady kind of like creeps around, and I get it. Like it doesn't sound very enjoyable. But at the end of the day, what I had to tell her was like, with your dieting history, with your where your metabolism's at, with how low our calories already are, how many steps you're already doing, if you don't get consistent with strength training, whether or not you like it, like we are going to run into the same problem of crash dieting and rebounding. We have to build your metabolism, especially for someone who's over the age of 50 and even just over the age of 35. You have to be strength training. Okay. And so I told it to her straight, and she was very much on board. But the biggest thing that hits for a lot of people is like, if you don't like strength training, it's like, okay, you don't have to. Like, I think we've been sold this illusion that you have to love every part of this journey, that you have to love every single thing about being healthy in order to do it. And like, we don't have those kinds of expectations for anything else in our life. We don't think to ourselves that we have to love our spouse exactly the same amount and way every single day. Otherwise, we can't be married. It's like, no, I'm going to want to punch my spouse in the face some days, right? But I still love them, and I'm still going to stick with them, right? Or you don't have the expectation of loving every single thing that you do at your job every single day for the paycheck, but you still do it, right? And your health is the same way. It's like we're treating it as this optional thing that should only be enjoyable, when really it's a non-negotiable part of you having the body and the life that you want. And sometimes just accepting that removes all of the friction around actually getting started. So those are my influencers being honest. I would love to know, if you listen to this, which one was your favorite? Which one have you fallen for before? Which one did you fall for up until the point I literally just put it on this podcast? Send me a message. I actually want to hear from you guys, and really just kind of continue that conversation and continue to debunk maybe what you didn't know. So thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for your attention, because I know it's your most valuable resource. And I will look forward to seeing you guys back here for the next one.